Chapter 277 Indian Arranged Marriage, Part 1. Rani Krishna spent 1 year and 1 month in the prison at Baroda city before her trial convened. Her lawyer presented enough evidence to cast reasonable doubt and masterfully proved that she was innocent of the charges. He was able to show a conspiracy, and so Rani no longer had her sister's blood on her hands. She was acquitted with honor. Rani neither blamed the government of India nor the police for her 13-month incarceration. From the time she was apprehended in Berlin, Rani understood the motive behind her arrest. She knew that Dawood Ibrahim's Muslim terrorists wanted to get hold of her daughter, which explained the malicious conspiracy against her. She jeopardized her life and went to jail for the sake of protecting her daughter. She considered spending 13 months in a rotten Indian jail a motherly honor rather than something to be ashamed of. As soon as she was set free, Rani traveled to Mumbai. She stayed in a small hotel. She decided not to visit any of her Bollywood friends. She remembered that when she was in jail, she had contacted many of them and begged them to bail her out, but none of them came to her aid or were prepared to support her in her hour of need. She just wanted to get her immigrant visa reissued again because she was very eager to travel to the USA and see her daughter again. Spending most of her time in solitude, with her fate hanging in the balance, the only thing she missed behind bars was her daughter. She had many wonderful plans in mind for her daughter. First, she wanted to get her married to her well-educated nephew who was going to be a medical doctor. She expected it would be an honor for her uneducated daughter to marry a medical graduate from one of the most prestigious and eminent medical schools in the world. Second, after getting her daughter settled, Rani wanted to begin producing the movie of Ifat Khan. Third, she wanted to help her daughter begin her import-export business, which was the basis for their immigrant visas. Fourth, she wanted to help her daughter resurrect her dream of building a shelter and charitable organization to house the street children in Mumbai. In the interest of safety, she would recommend handling the last project anonymously. After all, once bitten, twice shy. During her time of incarceration and after much contemplation, Rani resolved that her daughter should be warned against ever speaking against the Prophet Muhammad or the Quran again. As a public figure, everything uttered by her would probably be misquoted or misconstrued. The last instance had almost cost them both their lives. Rani was determined her daughter was to distance herself from that dangerous cult which had cost millions of innocent people their lives. 270 million non-Muslims were slain by Muslim invaders during the spread of Islam through the so-called Islamic conquests. Fifth, for a long time, ever since she had adopted her Muslim daughter, Rani nurtured the idea that her daughter should officially forsake the faith that so far was the affliction of her existence and the justification for all her childhood abuses. She wanted her daughter to forsake her family name, Khan, and take the name of her future Hindu husband, Patel. She wanted her to legally discard the pagan name of Aphrodite, which her evil captor, Mahmud Khan, had chosen for her. She would love to see her daughter carry the name Pooja Patel. Thinking way ahead, Rani shivered at the thought of her future grandchildren bearing a Muslim name. Nursing and playing around with those wonderful plans, Rani Krishna spent the better part of 3 weeks in a small hotel before her visa was reissued by the American consulate in Mumbai. Wasting no time, she was on the next available flight from Mumbai to London via Dubai. At the Dubai International Airport, she was acutely aware that it was an Arab safe haven for what she considered to be the most dangerous and virulent creature ever to walk the earth, the notorious international Don, Dawood Ibrahim. She refused to even step off the aircraft so that her feet would not be defiled by Muslim soil. She had absolutely no intention of taking a travel break on land that sheltered the mobster who killed so many and continued to threaten her family. She was particularly watchful of the transit passengers who boarded during their layover. She noted some old Arabs joining the flight. Rani shuddered knowing that any one of them could potentially be exactly like the evil Saudi man who had raped her adopted daughter for 10 years under the Institute of Child Marriage. She wondered how any law on earth or any divinely ordained commandment from God could ever sanction the right of old perverts to abuse little girls. She dimly remembered a documentary where it discussed even wild beasts would not reproduce with a female of its kind that had not reached puberty. This stopover had only cemented the fact that she despised the Arabian cult and their followers who lacked the ability to forsake these evil laws. At Heathrow International Airport, Rani Krishna felt a rush of relief when she saw Arabs leaving the aircraft. With any luck, she would never have to lay eyes on them again. Rani's strong character and her culture simply did not tolerate those who had no respect for women. In fact, Rani hated with a passion any man who could strike a woman or sexually abuse a female. She was particularly sensitive to the abuse of little children. Her relief did not last very long. Boarding the plane that would take her from London to the US, she discovered a plane full of black burqa women and somber-looking bearded men. From their appearance and mannerisms, she surmised that most of them were Muslim travelers from Somalia, Sudan, Pakistan, Iran, and India. For Rani Krishna, this qualified as the single most unpleasant flight she had ever taken. Everything she saw on the flight reminded her of her daughter's plight and oppression. Rani had only one address to go to, the address of her nephew, which she had obtained from his ex-girlfriend's visa. Once she arrived, she was disappointed to learn that her nephew had moved out many months ago. The owner of the building did not have a forwarding address for his mail and did not know where he had moved to. Not too worried, Rani knew that the next best place to locate her nephew was the registrar's office at Harvard University. As Rani closed in on her nephew's whereabouts, she was looking forward to meeting her daughter after being separated from her for over a year. She still nursed fears that her daughter might still be in jail. To that end, she had brought enough affidavits, certificates, and depositions to prove her innocence. Rani was certain that she would be able to convince the American FBI officials that her daughter was the farthest thing from being a terrorist and that she was in fact a bona fide target for Muslim extremists and their terrorist hit list. She firmly believed that the evidence she had in hand would clear up all charges against her daughter, and maybe even entitle her to compensation. Rani was expectant and could hardly contain herself. She was just about to set into motion a chain of events that would free her daughter from the clutches of Islam that had imprisoned her for so long. She was determined not only to free her from her Islamic cocoon, but also to burn her burqas and set her free from that symbol of oppression for women, forever. During her confinement, Rani Krishna filled her days and nights thinking and planning her daughter's marriage. It was probably the only thing that kept her sane. All she looked forward to was being released from that less than humane existence and joining her daughter in the United States. She had no doubt that her daughter's beauty and assets would make her very desirable to her sister's son. If Rahul still agreed to marry her daughter, Rani had already planned the most elaborate Indian wedding ever celebrated outside Indian shores. The guests of honor would be carefully screened and security would be de rigueur and no Indian Muslims would be invited. It was at this stage where she no longer cared about public opinion. She spent her first night in a beautiful hotel. The following day, with great expectations lighting up her face, Rani Krishna approached her nephew at the medical college. In anticipation of the meeting, she had brought many gifts for both her daughter and nephew. She could not wait to embrace her and knew that they would have much to tell each other, not all of which was going to be pleasant. Rani Krishna managed to locate her nephew but was taken aback when Rahul Patel told her that he had no idea where her daughter had disappeared after her release from prison. Rani felt as if her nephew had poured a bucket of icy cold water on her head. Rahul explained that he had searched for Aphrodite Krishna Khan or her other name Amrita Khan, and called as many places as he could to find out where she might be. He could not find any trace of her. No one of the Indians he knew in the city claimed to have seen her or knew anything about her. He said he had talked to Hindus as well as Muslims, but not a single person was able to positively identify her photo or was acquainted with her. It seemed she had left the city immediately following her release. Even the police had no idea where she went or where she was staying. Rani Krishna began to weep bitterly at the news and realized that her daughter's trail was now many months old. She began to worry about her daughter's ability to care for herself. She was like a child who always needed a babysitter or an adult to take care of her. It did not help that she had looks that would tempt a priest and heir to a huge fortune. She was, simply put, an unwilling temptress to almost every male that fixed his eyes upon her. She could only assume that if her daughter was still alive, she would be somewhere in the city, held against her will by an unknown captor. The first thing she thought of was to lodge a missing persons report. The police would have to contend with a missing person who had not been seen for over a year and was being held in captivity. Rani asked her nephew to take her to the nearest police station to file a complaint against unknown suspects who allegedly kidnapped, imprisoned, and raped her defenseless daughter. At the police office, Rani supplied information to indicate that her daughter was childish and her mind wasn't fully developed. In her report, she stated that her daughter's mind stopped developing due to the brutal rape she was subjected to at an early age. When the police checked the records of her daughter's previous detention by local authorities, the interrogation revealed that her daughter was somewhat childish in her answers and remained confused, unable to give appropriate responses. It was for that very reason they appointed a state psychiatrist who determined that her earlier arrest may have violated the legal rights of an adult of limited mental capacity. Her daughter should have been appointed a legal representative and guardian upon these findings. As far as the law was concerned, detaining a mentally deficient person for over a month without proper medical and psychological tests being conducted was abusive and inhumane treatment, and she should not have been held without informing the next close relative. The Special Task Force and local FBI unit, on the other hand, should not have allowed an intellectually challenged person to walk out of prison without ensuring that she was received by a guardian or caretaker. Rani understood that the FBI could quite possibly be held liable for violating the civil rights of Aphrodite Krishna Khan. Rani Krishna's complaint turned the city upside down. Every police precinct was notified about the missing and likely murdered or kidnapped mentally retarded Indian girl. Aphrodite's photo was placed in every police station, building, storefront, government office, and mall in the city and state. Her photo was posted on every bus depot, railway station, and airport. All colleges and public, private school departments were notified and their staff. It was requested that anyone having knowledge of her should immediately inform the authorities. Her mother, Rani Krishna, offered a reward of $25,000 for anyone who would supply information of her whereabouts. After a citywide search, the FBI located the hiding place where the young mentally handicapped girl was being held captive by an individual. That person happened to be a Muslim man. He was a cabbie who emigrated from India to the United States with his Indian wife over 11 years ago. He was still married and had 3 children with his Indian wife. He also had fathered a girl with the mentally disabled girl. While the FBI had discovered the place where the intellectually challenged girl was being kept, they were cautious in staking out the residence to rescue the young girl so as not to alert her captor. They were afraid he might kill the young girl if he got wind they were onto him. Defying the FBI's request to keep silent, her mother appeared in a TV interview and revealed that her daughter was already a victim of 2 kidnaps and rapes. Firstly, she was kidnapped, imprisoned, and raped by an 70-year-old Saudi man. The old Saudi man kidnapped her at the tender age of 7 and imprisoned her in his house for 10 years. Whatever evil that wicked Arab man did to her daughter was justified by an Islamic Sharia court in Jeddah in the name of their religion, which allowed marriage of underage children. Secondly, the mother of the mentally delayed young woman mentioned that her daughter was also kidnapped, imprisoned, and raped by another evil Muslim man. He was a famous Bollywood film director. Her former kidnappers, captors, and rapists met with a violent end. One of them was murdered by another inmate while he was in remand waiting for his final trial for kidnapping and raping another young Indian girl who was just 11 years old. The second captor committed suicide in order to escape public scandal and imminent incarceration. At the end of the interview, the Indian mother demanded a severe punishment for the third kidnapper, captor, and rapist of her beloved daughter. What troubled Rani Krishna and made her extremely angry was the outrageous fact that the third kidnapper of her daughter happened to be meeting the same sort of description as her previous kidnappers. He was more or less like them in his religion, age, and social status. He was a Muslim man, a married man, had children, and he was 20 years older than her daughter. Everything about him made Rani hate him with a passion. In particular, his religious background made her despise him even more. Rani could not believe that a married man with 3 children would leave his wife and children to go with a girl old enough to be his daughter. Rani said in front of the police that if the American courts did not issue a sentence of death upon him, she would take justice into her own hands and skin him alive. Among all 3 of her daughter's kidnappers, Rani Krishna discovered that the third one was the worst. He was the only one who succeeded in fully brainwashing her daughter. Her daughter actually loved the man. He made her believe that he was her Romeo and she was his Juliet, or her Caius and she was his beloved Layla. It saddened her that Amrita had not stopped crying since she had been rescued. She begged and pleaded with her mother to intervene and save her lover from the police. She even told her mother that she would kill herself if her lover wasn't released and allowed to live with her the way they had been doing for over a year. The only other thing Rani could not deal with was the fact that he had fathered a child with her daughter. The child made it hard for Rahul Patel to accept her daughter for marriage. Nevertheless, he said that he was still prepared to marry Amrita although she was not a virgin, but he would not accept her illegitimate baby girl, suggesting that the child be given up for adoption before they were married. Rahul said that he did not want to bring up someone's bastard child. Rani appreciated the great sacrifice that her nephew was prepared to make and so tried to convince her daughter to forsake her illegitimate daughter. Amrita became extremely furious when she heard that her cousin brother called her daughter a bastard child and her mother labeled her an illegitimate daughter. At this stage, she revealed a hidden secret that her detained husband had warned her from revealing to anyone. She challenged her cousin brother and mother and confessed that she had married her lover Jimmy according to the Islamic Sharia law. She said that Islam allows a Muslim man to have up to 4 wives at the same time. She even produced the marriage certificate that had been issued by the Imam of the mosque. Amrita insisted Rahul and her mother apologize to her for calling her daughter a bastard child. This new development complicated the situation for Amrita instead of resolving it. Her mother immediately informed the police about the secret marriage of her daughter with her kidnapper. The police knew that the kidnapper had a Muslim wife and this new information meant he had another wife at the same time. It appeared that he was practicing Sharia law by having 2 wives in the USA. It was unlawful for any person to have more than 1 wife in America. Now the cops had one more charge to add to his list of crimes. The police found out that the kidnapper was taking money from his victim every month and giving it to his first wife. The bank records of Aphrodite's account showed a monthly transfer of $5,000 to the account of her kidnapper. The money would inevitably end up in the bank account of his first wife. Amrita's account activity also showed that she was spending heavily on her kidnapper. It was starting to look like a Stockholm Syndrome scenario. The police also noted that the kidnapper had ceased working and was entirely dependent upon his victim. Those new findings indicated that the captor was exploiting his victim financially and causing her to spend money on him and his other wife and children. Those new findings were summarily added to his increasingly long rap sheet.